Dear students, our lecture today is about the adrenal or suprarenal glands. Objectives of this lecture to know the histological structure and part of adrenal gland and their major secretory activities. They are paired glands located at the upper pole of kidney and embedded with a perirenal adipose tissue, and they are flattened structure. They are variable in size and shape. They range from 4 to 6 cm in length, 1 to 2 cm in width, and up to 6 mm in thickness, and together they reach up to 80 gram in weight. Their size and weight vary according to the age of individual and the physiological condition. In a fresh state, when a section done within the adrenal gland, we can see a peripheral region called the cortex that appear yellow in color, and a central part called the medulla that appear reddish brown in color. The left adrenal gland appear crescent in shape, while the right adrenal gland appear pyramidal in shape. In biological origin, the cortex and the medulla are derived from two distinct origin, and they are differ in their histological structure and their function and their hormone they produce. So they are considered as a two organs united to form single adrenal gland. The cortex is arised from coelomic epithelium, so it is a mesodermal in origin, while the medulla arises from neural crest cells, which is in ectodermal in origin, which is common with the sympathetic ganglionic cells. In this figure, which is a section in embryo during development, we have here the dorsal aorta, and here we have the neural crest cells, and we have fold of coelomic epithelium. The coelomic epithelium give rise to the adrenal cortex, and the neural crest cells forming the cells of the adrenal medulla, and they unite forming the adrenal glands. The cells of the gland really they are in form of cord of cells supported by a network of reticular fibers, and it is separated from each other by sinusoidal capillaries, and the whole gland is covered by a connective tissue capsule that sends trabecular of collagen fibers within the parenchyma of the glands. In this figure we can see the connective tissue capsule covering the outer surface of the gland, and the parenchyma of the gland made of cord of cells that separated by sinusoid that appear black in color. The cord of cells forming the cortex and the inner region called the medulla, which is highly vascularized. The blood supply of the adrenal gland really it is a highly vascular structure, and it receives blood vessels from different sources, and these vessels penetrate the organ from different points, and some of the vessels forming plexus or capillary plexus within the cortex, these are called cortical arteries, and some of them traverse the cortex passing to the medulla forming their plexuses within the medulla. These are called medullary vessels or arteries, and both plexuses, cortical and medullary, they join together forming the suprarenal vein, which is the main venous drainage that contains the hormones that exit from the adrenal gland. In this figure we can see we have vascular structure out in the capsule and the outer cortex that forming a capillary plexus within the cortex. These are called cortical capillaries, and those that traverse the cortex and forming their cortex within the medulla called medullary arteries. So cortical arteries forming their plexus within the cortex, while the medullary arteries forming their plexuses within the medulla, and both ultimately join together to be drained toward the central suprarenal vein. In this figure, which is the same as the previous one, this is interrupted line representing the cortical artery that have its plexus within the cortex, and this continuous line represented a medullary artery that it is plexus within the medulla, and both joining the suprarenal vein within the medulla. The secretory activity of the adrenal medulla is different. In the cortex, the cells are of type of steroid secreting cells that are secrete cortisol hormones and are rich within the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, while the medulla they are protein secreting cells including catecholamine. So they are distinct in their hormonal secretion. In this figure we can see perirenal adipose tissue, and this is the cortex, and this is the central region, which is highly vascular medulla that rich with different sizes vein. This is another figure showing the adipose tissue and the capsule, and we have the cortex and centrally the medullary region. Another figure showing the capsule, and we have the cortex that's subdivided into zones. First one called the zona glomerulosa, the second one, which is the widest one, called the zona fasciculata, the innermost one called the zona reticularis, that followed by the centrally located adrenal medulla. So the adrenal cortex, as we mentioned, it is a steroid secreting cells that received steroid, which is a low molecular weight that is easily diffused through the plasma membrane to be processed into different types of hormones. The cortex is subdivided into zona glomerulosa, which form 15% of the gland, zona fasciculata forming 65% of the gland, the widest region, and the innermost zone of the cortex, zona reticularis, that forms 7% of the cortex on the whole gland. In this figure we can see the adrenal gland located at the upper pole of the kidney, and here it is sectioned to show the capsule and the cortex peripherally that with its three subzones and the inner central medulla. According to the cellular structure and histological arrangement of the cells, we can differentiate the zone into zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. In the zona glomerulosa, it lies immediately beneath the capsule, and the cells are polyhedral and arranged in form of arched cords. Their major secretory activity is the production of mineralocorticoid called aldosterone, which is important for fluid homeostasis in the body and important to regulate sodium-potassium level by the kidney. This zona glomerulosa lies immediately beneath the capsule into form of arched cord of cells. The second one, which is the zona reticularis, in which the cells are arranged into longitudinal cord of cells that perpendicular to the capsule. They are formed by certain type of cells that are rich with lipid droplet that disappear during routine histological preparation, leaving vacuolated cells called spongiocytes. Their major secretory activity is the production of glucocorticoid, which is especially cortisol. This zone is under the control of adrenocorticotropic hormone of anterior pituitary. Cortisol is important for carbohydrate, protein, and lipid metabolism. It raises blood glucose and cellular synthesis, which is due to gluconeogenesis that's produced by the hepatocyte, and it's controlled by the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Under high magnification, we can see the spongiocyte. These cells appear vacuolated due to high content of lipid droplets. The innermost zone of the cortex, which is zona reticularis, it is found near to the medullary region. The cells are arranged in form anastomosing irregular cord. Their major secretory activity to produce a weak androgen, which is dihydroepiandrosterone. This zone can show certain type of pigment called lipofuscin granules or pigment that appear upon aging, so it's called aging pigment, and it is also contains some lipid droplets. The adrenal medulla, which is the central region of the gland, it is highly vascularized. The cells are irregular cords, and they are showing their secretory granules in which the secretion are stored. The granules containing a catecholamine, either epinephrine or norepinephrine. It's important to consider that the cells of adrenal cortex not stored hormone. They are synthesized